Get ready for a masterclass on tactical giving. What's up, Active Lifers? Welcome back to the Active Life Podcast. I'm Dr. Sean Pastuch. I'm your host. Today's guest is Andrew Coates. Andrew Coates is a contributor to some of the most major fitness publications you've ever heard. We're talking about things like Men's Health. We're talking about things like T Nation. He's been everywhere. The guy is better connected than anybody I've potentially ever met in my entire life. And on this podcast, he's extremely giving with what it takes to get to where he is. You're going to love this podcast. When you do, make sure to leave it that 5-star rating, write us a review, and share this with a friend. If you can go the extra mile and send Andrew a message thanking him for coming on the show and sharing so much value with you, I know he would find that exceptionally valuable. Let's get you to the show. Andrew Coates, welcome to the Active Life Podcast.
Sean, I really appreciate you having me. It's kind of crazy because doing a little bit of research, I was listening last night to my good pal Don Saladino, and I know you've had Eb Samuel on. He's one of my editors, and Jason Phillips. And it's like, you don't necessarily have a ton of guests on here. You've got some great ones. And I'm thinking to myself, it's actually a really big honor to be on here because, well, I know your reputation, what you've done with your brand and business. You know, this is not some fly-by-night thing. So I'm very honored. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. You know, you're right. For me, when I'm looking to bring a guest on, and we were talking about this a little bit before, the key thing for me before I ask somebody is, do I want to get to know this person? It's not, like for me, it's not about the size of the following. It's not about the size of their bank account. It's not about any of that stuff. It's all about, do I think it'd be fun to chat with this person, develop a relationship, learn from them, and share them with the audience who is listening to this? Because I believe there's a lot of fluff out there, and it's easy for people to hide behind, how would I call it, manipulated statistics, right? So whether that's their follower count that in which some is bought or cheaply earned, or the money in their bank account, or whatever the case is, I want to talk to people who I believe are genuinely going to help me become better at being me, and who are going to help our audience become better at being them. And so I appreciate you accepting the invite to come on and chat about it.
Well, I mean, I feel the same way. And I mean, one of the things like I don't do, hey, like it's common in the industry for people to go, hey, I'll get you on my podcast if you'll come on if you let me come on yours. And like, I don't even think that way. And there's been like a couple of times where it's like clicked that way with people. But I mean, I've got to get you on mine because I want to share you with my audience. But I selfishly want to do the same thing you do, which is to get to know you better. And I think we were talking about this off air. Unfortunately, a lot of coaches have this mindset of, well, what can I get out of situations? Like, what can I get out of these interactions? There's a book I've got up here. It's one of my favorites. It's actually my philosophy. I read this and like, this guy's just stole my brain waves. Joe Polish's What's in It for Them, right? Every coach should read this stuff. And I'm going to do a presentation that's going to incorporate this. And this overlaps like some Alex Hormozy stuff. He talks about something similar, and it's like, it helped me crystallize it. I think a lot of people in the industry, they have a problematic balance between how much they give and how much they take. So I like the analogy of earning a bank of grace. It's my philosophy. Like I go about my media, my long form media, which is very important. Social media, sure. Interactions with this attitude of giving as much into a bank of grace as broadly and as individually as I possibly can, without looking to make many withdrawals. I very rarely withdraw from that bank of grace. There are people that will withdraw every bit of grace that they earn, they'll immediately withdraw it. And a lot of people are living within overdraft. And guys like you and me, we sense that and we don't want to work with those kind of people. Now, we talk off air, but I joke that my love language is how can I connect and support and help other people? And that's foreign and alien to a lot of people because, well, they're either completely or partially scarce in their mindset. They think, well, if I do this for these people, then it's going to take opportunities away from me. And that's total rubbish. I coach full time. I have an online business. I have an online group business with a partner. I have 2 podcasts. I write for a number of different publications. I never miss a workout. I sleep 8 hours a night. I'm good with my nutrition. That is probably the extent of my life, literally. I travel, public speak. I probably have like 8 or 9 events this year. And I cannot possibly fulfill all of the articles that my editors would love. I cannot possibly fulfill every opportunity that comes along, but I can share those opportunities with other people. So I pulled a lot of my friends in who I believe in, who've earned it, into writing for publications like T Nation or Muscle and Fitness or what have you. And it feels good. And it's not about how do I benefit in the long run. It's not about this calculated transactional thing. Too many people are very transactional with how they approach the industry. It's how can I do something like one of my favorite examples that I use is our friend Luca Hocevar, right? Luca's great. You and him spoke at Coaching Con. And I first met Luca in 2017 when I saw this notification for this event that he was putting on, his Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Conference. And it had a lineup full of people like Adam Bornstein. I'm like, oh man, I love Adam Bornstein. And I'd met Pete Dupuis and Mark Fisher earlier that year at another thing. I want to go see them. Brett Bartholomew was there, John Russin, crazy lineup. So I went. I brought a couple of people that I told about. So I'm already bringing people. Showed up, immersed myself in it, met all these people, developed a lot of really cool relationships, that some of which turned into great things later. I brought some of those people on my podcast, and I had Luke on my podcast. So then later on, I return again in 2021 when he does it, when travel was a bit of a headache from Canada, to support. But along the way, it's like Luke is crushing it. Like the guy is literally one of the most skyrocketing stars in our space. He's someone that everybody can really learn a lot from and be inspired by. It's like, how do you do something for someone like that? And it's not, and I've heard Alex Hormozy talks about this a lot. Like, don't ask people what you can do for them. Just figure out what would be valuable. So I realized that we were doing a similar training concept on our media. And I reached out to him. I said, listen, I know you've never written for T Nation. Do you want to collaborate on an article with me? I'll do most of the work, but we'll do it on this particular concept. And he's like, oh man, that'd be cool. Because he loved T Nation, read it for years. Many of his friends and his mentors like Martin Rooney and Eric Cressy, John Berardi, all written for it. And if Luca cared, he could have just rolled up and said, hey, can I write something for you guys? And they would have been like, my God, yes. But he's busy, right? Didn't think of it. So we put together the piece. It works great. Tony Gentlecore fit into it as well. I brought him in as well. It did awesome and opened the door. And then Luca gave them a few more pieces. Anyway, so now he has the feather in the cap of having gotten to write for a publication that he had learned from and really enjoyed for years. So if you approach the industry with this mindset and it's not transactional and you just keep showing up and giving, you earn this giant bank of grace to where I think social media can really grow. It's not the only purpose of it, but your media can grow. And then what happens is people just see how much you're giving and all the stuff you're doing. It's another Hormozy thing. It's like, make your free shit better than their paid shit. Like you just give away a lot of free stuff. And people don't pay for the information. They pay for the coaching, the mentorship, the accountability, the relationship, the experience, the implementation. And if your free stuff is out there, there's a lot of it, and it's great, and they like the way that you're just abundant and giving and responding to people, answering questions, then people go, well, holy shit, like that's the person I want to work with. And people look at like the time I spend on growing a social media following. Okay, does it have an easily calculable ROI? No, but does it lead to a steady stream of inquiries and opportunities that I value that I don't actually ever have to ask for? Absolutely. And it keeps my core business so sustained and fulfilled that it frees up the bandwidth to work on, hey, a presentation to go and travel to do something, or I can take the time and put something together that helps someone else and benefits their career.
You're speaking my love language. Put out content and make the make it free and better than what other people have to offer. So in the last, and I want to go back a second because you said a lot of things I want to ask you questions about, but I want to go back and I want to acknowledge the people who you were mentioning, the Don Saladino, the Luca Hocevar, the Eric Cressys of the world. Those are guys who I hold in a super high regard too. And when I met Luca for the first time at Coaching Con, we were talking a bit before, but he didn't really know who I was, and I was first getting to know who he was. And when we met at Coaching Con, the thing that I found most endearing about him was the immerse the immersion that he gave to the event. You know, I told my wife when she asked, "Oh, so you speak for an hour. What do you want to do the rest of the time?" I'm like, no. We're guests at this event. Our job, if we went to somebody's house for dinner, what would we do after dinner was over? We would clean up. What would we do before dinner started? We would bring something. We wouldn't even ask what we could bring. We would just bring something that we thought would add value to the experience. What would we do after the event? We would reciprocate. We would find a way to bring those people back to our house. And I didn't have to explain this to my wife in any great detail. She's an incredible woman. But she understood immediately. And so our intention when we went to the event was to do more for the event outside of my speaking opportunity than I did from the stage. And so she was talking to people. I was talking to people. We were getting to know people. And I was most impressed by that about Luca and Waitia, who is his partner. That
she's wonderful.
Yeah.
She supports him. And meanwhile, she's like leaning into the space and growing. And I mean, she's going to be an absolute rock star because I mean, she's the best mentor you could ask for, literally underfoot all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, she's a wonderful human being. That entire community are great people. And I'm gonna call you out for something, Sean, because more people in the industry actually need to know who you are. Because I picked up from the episode with Dawn is that you have been a little comfortable hiding in the background. And I think there are also coaches. This is maybe almost seems incongruent with what I said earlier about abundance mindset, but there are a lot of coaches who also have this either really authentic humility or overly, like almost like a manufactured humility. And I don't think that's what you're doing at all, but some do, to where they hold themselves back and they play small. And that's also a mistake too, because if you have great things to share and to help people and you're abundant mindset, then, and again, like, I feel like I listen to a lot of Alex's stuff and it's like this guy is picking my brain out of things that I also believe in. So the pivot on Alex's philosophy towards building a massive brand, well, if you have a larger brand and you're willing to lean into it, that is a point of leverage. You can use it for a tremendous amount of good. Financial windfall is one of those things, but other great opportunities to educate and make other people's lives better. And I have friends in the industry. One good friend of mine who wants now to get out there a bit more is Nick Shaw of Renaissance Periodization. Mm-hmm. Now, if you know Renaissance Periodization, most people think Dr. Mike Israetel, the smartest and funniest humans on the planet, right? Mike's amazing, right? But Nick is every bit as essential to the infrastructure, the birth and the growth and the foundation and the integrity that is RP. RP is amazing, right? I endorse their stuff any day. But Nick also is like you in that he's uncomfortable with like calling attention to himself. Whereas I'm fearless in it. And at least if you make most everything about everybody else, it also creates a lot of allowance for you to say, hey, look what I just did.
So
I just did this.
Let me ask you a question then, okay? Because what you're speaking to exactly my weakest spot. And I appreciate that you were able to see it. And Nick has been a guest on this podcast before. And people should know, at least from what I learned on that podcast, I do not have the relationship with him that you do. The kind of things that he's been through and never asked anybody to, sympathize for him while he was doing it, just added so much reverence for me in the character that he has. And if you want to learn about that, you can go back and listen to the podcast. He talked about it. I don't know where you'd find it's way back, but.
Well, I mean, one of the things I'll say straight up is like during COVID stuff, when that came crashing down, his wife was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, that's what we talked about.
Like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Okay. Nick is a person of the utmost character and integrity, right? Everybody listening right now, I mean, there's a very big difference between dropping a whole bunch of names and showcasing and sharing amazing people. You should be following Luca. You should be following Don. You should be following Nick Shaw. These are great people. They're leaders within the industry. You can learn a lot from them. And if you get the opportunity to ever travel to an event where they are present, take advantage of that. Seriously, they're great people.
I appreciate that. So you're right. I have a hard time asking people to do for me. And it goes almost too far it has gone too far in the direction of give, and never ask, because I've always just felt uncomfortable asking. And so an example, we spent the last 2 years, we spent almost $2 million building an infrastructure on our company, building content that was intentionally going to be distributed in a way that, has no direct implication to scale. Just make sure the client who buys it is successful. And we put more of that online, codified for free in an app. We call it the Active Life Community app. There's more, I promise you, there's more in there than most companies sell. And it represents about 8% of our education. And I do have a hard time saying, hey, I want to talk on your stage. How do I get on your stage? Asking people to get on their podcasts, asking for, whatever the introductions are. That is the thing I struggle with the most, because I feel oftentimes like I haven't delivered enough value to the person who I'm asking for. Does that make sense?
I mean, sure. There's two things there. The second thing you said is that's still an element of imposter syndrome, right? I mean, and I think most of us in the industry either are deeply inflicted with imposter syndrome, which I think is a good thing, because it says that you care about your character and doing a good thing and over delivering for people, right? I think that's a big thing. And two, you don't necessarily need to ask. It's just about putting yourself out there with media in various forms and in rooms and building relationships. And I know you're great at the relationship side. And it's just, I'm also probably really aggressive with this stuff because I like being boots on the ground at a lot of events. I have tons of interconnectivity through podcasting. I've had a ton of people on my own. And that casts a bit of a wider net. And every once in a while, you end up with someone who later on you decide, I don't want to be associated with that person. But that's the risk of putting yourself out there, right? Whereas most of I can't remember where I heard this. Oh, it was another Hormozy podcast, but he was talking with Andy Frisella, and they were talking about, and he was talking about getting fucked over. Now, Andy likes to, engages in hyperbole, like overblows stuff, right? He's a bombastic dude.
No.
But, they're talking about this concept of just giving and over time. And even though like some people will take from you and you'll get fucked over, but I think there's two elements to it. One is if on the aggregate you just give so bloody much, the universe will give you back tenfold, and it will more than pay for the losses. Those are like bad debts you write off, and they're a small percentage of the total net windfall that will come your way. So that's one thing. And two, it's about never losing that goodness and giving in your soul to where you become jaded and you stop wanting to do good things for people. And you also, over time, you get better at figuring out, all right, who's in it because they're genuine and they want to help people and they're genuinely interested in you, and who is interested in their own status, which is something I find really fascinating. We set off air, we talk about it. We do in our world see quite a bit of status seeking behavior. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's okay to want to be successful. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it's singularly focused on that person, what's in it for them, themselves singularly, and they don't really, even though they'll tell you, my favorite thing is someone reaches out and says, hey, can I come on your podcast? I've got a really great story. And this is Eb Samuel recently on my podcast, when people are always asking him if they can get published in Men's Health, right?
Yep.
Big deal. And Eb's answer was, no one cares about your story. And he's right, because they care about how does the reader, how does the listener benefit from this, right? It's what's in it for them, right? Like the title of the book. And so if you just make it your mission and your mantra to deliver incredible stuff, but then find points of leverage where you can get it in front of more people. And again, one of my chosen ways, I really have three ways. One, it's a podcast. That's fun. Two, it's been aggressively working on social media strategy that has allowed me to reach more people. And a lot of people don't know this, but I do it informally, but I consult with some really successful people in the industry on their social media strategy, which has allowed them to grow it. Right. So that part is super fun. And then three is writing for some of the bigger publications that I've written for, which I'm very proud of. And that in turn gives back credibility and authority for people to look at my social media posts when they see a clever Twitter graphic that I share. And then they look and they go, oh shit, this guy's written for T Nation and Generation Iron and Barband and Men's Health and Muscle and Fitness Magazine and the Personal Trainer Development Center, right? And they look at that and go, okay, that's not a person who's just fluffy on social media. There's some substance there. And that's deliberate, right? And it's okay for coaches to do that. And if a coach listening, 'cause I'm guessing your audience is probably mainly coaches, am I correct in that?
Who knows? That's right. You check your statistics. They don't tell you who they are.
Guys, listen, everybody listening right now, I got a task for you, okay? If you're listening to this and you like Sean, I want you to message him. I want you to send him a DM on his Instagram. If you're not following him, go follow his Instagram. And I want you to send him a message and let him know you listen to this episode and say, hey, I'm a coach or I'm an enthusiast. Tell him a little bit about who you are and touch base with him. And Sean, I'm assuming, is going to actually respond to you. And
I respond to every DM. I try to send a message to everybody who follows me, thanking them for following me.
I teach that. I actually teach that to coaches. Absolutely, right? That's a brilliant strategy.
I listened to a podcast. It was on Masters of Scale with the founders of Airbnb. And when they were talking about what they did early on, the advice they got from their mentor was to go stay at all their Airbnbs. And they're like, how are we going to do that when we have thousands? He's like, you're not, but you don't have thousands. So go stay at them right now and figure out what makes them successful and what makes them fail. Do the unscalable thing until you can't do it anymore. And that's when they came out with the book that would let people know what you could do in their town. It's when they came out with photos for the Airbnbs being on the internet. And so to me, if someone follows my Instagram account and I'm genuinely interested in growing it, it's my duty to recognize that they followed me and not to treat it as if this happens all the time.
And most people do have the bandwidth to do it. I can't catch every person that follows anymore. Right? That at this scale is impossible. I do sometimes still, but that's tricky. But for a very long time, I did this, and it opened the lines of communication. And I used to send texts until one guy thought it was an autoresponder. So then I sent him a voice message.
Yep.
Voice messages are magic.
That's interesting.
Now, there's an etiquette to, or even a video message, right?
I do video, but some people don't open it because they think it's a weird video.
And fair, but that's the risk, right? I mean, that's the risk of all this stuff. But if someone chooses to follow you and they see you've sent them a video and you use their name, or if you don't know how to pronounce their name, you can try it or ask, because then it shows that it's not a mass video you're sending to everybody, but it's actually individualized to that person. And little things like this. Here's another thing that I think status-seeking people, status-craving people do, is they want to be able to post on social media, not spend the time engaging, not do that, but they want people to show up and to worship them. And fundamentally, that's what they want. They want the following and they want the vanity metric. They want the status without the effort that it takes. And for 3.5 years that I've been dedicated to building an Instagram following and engaging, I have relentlessly tried to respond to most of the comments, all of the DMs, and be accessible and interactive. And yes, it sounds time consuming. I probably send 200 maybe 100 to 200 voice messages a day. Sounds very time consuming. There's some etiquette to this too. If I send a 8-second voice message to say thank you to someone and I get 4-minute long voice messages in return, I will politely text and say, hey, listen, I'm very sorry, but I'm not able to listen to all that. Would you be kind enough to text me? Right. So there's an etiquette. Now I've got friends one of my friends who reached out to me asking about social media strategy, and we just crafted it. It was a very simple process. It's Joel Jameson. Joel is one of the most legendary strength and conditioning coaches. He is the guy who wrote the book literally on energy systems and conditioning.
He's the first person to consider HRV.
Absolutely. He's definitely the leading authority on HRV in the industry. And he's one of the nicest, most humble, down-to-earth guys, profoundly successful. Now, Joel and I will jam on social media stuff or what have you, and we'll send voice messages back and forth, minute long, what have you. But that's the kind of relationship we have, right? Or like Allie Gilbert, right? Allie's blowing up in the industry. She's doing really good. She's good. She's Charlie Weingroff's wife and good friends with Don Saladino. And she has her event, the Silverback Summit. And more people are going to discover who Allie is. And Allie and I will bounce voice back and forth. But, ultimately, if someone turns around and sends me a 30-second voice message back because they followed me because I sent them one, great, awesome. It's just sometimes there is an etiquette to it. And you also try to set it up so that way it doesn't become overwhelming, because not everybody has the bandwidth. Now, also, single guy with a big fluffy cat, the coach who's got two kids who, has that balance, may not have the bandwidth to do some of the things that I do. So take that into account. I still think that voice message, responding to questions for an individual, is still one of the highest leverage things you can do, much more so than maybe trying to respond to every comment. Now, again, depending on how big your social media following is, you probably still can find the bandwidth to do this stuff.
I don't
right?
I don't think bandwidth is a fair excuse, actually, because I have 3 kids, I have a wife, I own a business, I own a brick and mortar business, and there are months that are really good and there are months that are not good when I have to grind still. I appreciate your outside in looking perspective, that your belief is that I'm successful. I like to consider myself successful, and I have a very, very long way to go. I am not at all satisfied.
We all do, Sean.
Sure.
We all do.
Sure. But if you're in this business, you're in a relationship business. If you're a coach, you are in a relationship business. If somebody decides to follow you, I would argue you either do have the bandwidth to reply to them, or you are mismanaging your time. And the reason why you wouldn't have the ability to respond to somebody like you mentioned is the way that the notifications work. You might get people who follow you in between a bunch of likes and comments on a post, and then Instagram, frankly, just does not tell you have a new follower because they get buried in the notifications. Other than that, I think, sure, we get busy in work and we can try our best and miss, but if you're hitting 30% of the time and you're intending to hit 100, in a lot of ways you're successful. And I think that coaches who would say, I don't have any time to do that, just don't understand the leverage of relationships.
For any coaches listening, I'm going to give you something right now that will turn into some instant results. Whatever the size of your Instagram following is, okay? And if you haven't been sending messages to thank people, go look at your last 5 to 10 posts and work through everybody who has commented on your post. And then look if you've ever exchanged messages with them. And if you haven't, they've already shown that they're engaged with you. Send them a voice or video message. Just say thank you. Do not sell. In no way, shape, or form do you sell or hint at selling. You say thank you and you open the door to questions. That's it.
How do you open the door to questions? How do you open the door to questions?
You literally say, if you ever have any questions, hit me up with the DM. I love answering questions. That's it. Okay. Or your version of that. And then when you exhaust the number of people who've commented, you then go into the people who have liked your last post in the last few. And you look and have you ever had any interaction with them? Do they follow you, first of all, right? If they don't follow you, whatever, it might be God only knows what. They might have liked it. But if they have liked it and you've never interacted with them and they follow you, send them a voice or video message. Just say, listen, I appreciate your engaging with my content. I'm very grateful you're following. If you ever have questions, please shoot me a DM. I'd love to. Let me give you guys another little tactic that works. So if you go into your notifications, I got to bring this up so I can describe it to you guys. If you go to your Instagram notifications, and I'm Instagram centric with this stuff. You go to a little heart at the top and it will show your notifications. And on the top left, it will say mentions, right? And then 65 stories mention you. Depends on the scale, whatever. Go in there, open that up, and you will see everybody who has shared one of your posts that is publicly available, but has not tagged you. It'll also show the ones that have tagged you, because tag, you'll get a notification. So then type in this one you text, and you say, thank you so much for sharing my post. Smiley face emoji, whatever, right? And you do it for all of them, okay? And then if they turn around and they respond to you, you send a voice message in return so they know that's not an autoresponder, and you say, listen, no, genuinely thank you. Not everybody will respond. This sort of thing it can take a little bit of time, but guess what? If it takes time, it means you have a volume of this, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't take much time, you have a smaller volume of this, which still creates a lot of valuable touch points. This is one of the warmest points of contact you can create. And then you open the door by actually them hearing from you personally, not a VA or anything like that. And if you do this consistently, you'd be shocked at the people who were thinking about it. And the coaches that I've coached on this, mentored on this tactic, this is very tactical, but it's useful. They've turned around and said they picked up clients from doing this stuff. So if you're struggling to get clients, this right here is incredibly high leverage.
I would argue that it's a tactic until it becomes your mindset. Then it's no longer a tactic, right? It's the reason why that's valuable is because most people won't give you the time of day. And so if somebody decides to follow you because they think you did something valuable and you thank them for it, most people are floored by that because nobody is demonstrating any gratitude. So when you say, hey, I don't take it lightly that you decided to do this. Thank you. You're either the person who is doing that and who is looking for opportunities to do that, maybe not online because you didn't think of it, but now you've thought of it because you've heard us talk about it, or you're the person who's not looking for that stuff. And most of the people who are not looking for that stuff are upset or complaining that they're not getting enough engagement on their content. How do you get more engagement on your content? Engage with people who engage with you.
And this drives overall engagement, because if you're thanking people and all of the stuff we just talked about, they're going to engage with, share, comment on your stuff even more, which just boosts your stuff. I mean, especially relative to the size of my following, I've got some of the highest engagement you're going to find anywhere in our industry. And I'm proud of that. I mean, it's something that I've worked at, but it's been valuable. And every once in a while, this is one of the, like, the fun little things. This is not an attempt to boast. It's merely sometimes some really cool stuff happens. So I once noticed that Laz Alonso, the actor of The Boys fame and Fast and Furious 4, I'm a huge Fast and Furious guy.
Which one is he in The Boys? Who does he play in The Boys?
So he's Mother's Milk.
Okay.
He's MM. And so he shared one of my posts, and I'm like, holy shit. Okay, so I sent him a message. I thanked him. And that turned into a little exchange, and we followed each other, because I don't follow a lot of, like, actors and celebrities. And, he's just there hanging out. And, like, is that make me special or a big deal? Not really. No, of course not. But it's one of those fun little things, right? And you do this long enough, and every once in a while, like, so John Cena followed my threads yesterday. That was exciting. Like, holy shit. Okay. My baby brother is, like, a huge wrestling fan, so I sent him a screenshot of this stuff, and he thought this was the greatest thing ever. So he was
hope you told him he can't see you either. Your baby brother.
So I put up in my Instagram story, because, like, I'll have fun with this. Like, they're going to be people listening. Oh, he's bragging, whatever. No, that's not the point. It's like, it's fun. Enjoy the fun, right? Those little things. But, like, several of my friends messaged back and, like, I can't see this. Right. So that's that joke. Yeah. Right. Anyway, like, that's like I said, like, and what you're saying about tactics, like, the way I look at it is it's a specific action. So therefore a tactic, but it does all come from the overall bank of grace mindset. Like, if you are willing to make those endless deposits into a bank of grace and to shake loose of that scarcity mindset, that what's in it for me mindset, and also this shit's just fulfilling. I like seeing people happy. I like seeing my friends, get published in a big publication for the first time, or, a speaking gig, right? Like, I love stuff like that. When I can create, and if I can create those opportunities, I recently got, Jason Phillips reached out to me to get Don Saladino for, probably ain't going to announce that yet, but for Coaching Con. So if that works out, super, right? I've created speaking opportunities for Luca. Not that he needs it, right? I recently hooked Adam Bornstein up with one. I don't know if you guys know who Adam Bornstein is. Adam is an amazing guy, right? Really awesome dude. He's the editor of Arnold Schwarzenegger's email newsletter, Arnold's Pump Club. And he just published a book called You Can't Screw This Up. It's a phenomenal nutrition book. And so if I get to do cool stuff for those people who kind of have whatever they want, and then the up and coming coach who's worked really hard to deserve it as well, that's super fulfilling. And it takes nothing off my table. Nothing.
Well, what you're describing is the thesis that I talked about with Don, which is that the person who can give the most without needing anything in return is the most valuable person in the room. If you can be the person who's connecting people to others who are able to leverage success that they otherwise couldn't have, you are valuable to both of the people you just made the connection for. And if you don't ask for anything in return because you genuinely don't need anything, you just did it because you wanted to do it, then you can't get screwed. And that speaks to what you were describing before. I wanted to jump in, but you were on a roll. People who would say that they give, but they get screwed. I would argue that's only possible if you're not actually giving for the sake of giving. You're giving with the expectation of getting something back. Then you're getting screwed because it was transactional all along. And the reason you got screwed is probably because people sensed this is transactional all along. One of the things that I ran into that's problematic for me, I didn't think it would be. I thought that this would be such a lever pull for me to be successful with, is I started teaching people about sales. I love what I actually trademarked, United States Trademark Department, or whatever the trademark office. I own the trademark on the term ethical sales. And the definition of it is we only sell to people in the market for what we have, and we always sell to people in the market for what we have. Period. End of story. That's an ethical sale. Now, I wrote a book about it. I talked about it for a year nonstop on my social media, and it led to people believing if they talked to me, I was going to try to sell them something. I'm like, oh God, that was the opposite of the intent. But so now I'm digging my way out of that, right? It's just so interesting that you were talking about giving without feeling like you could be screwed about it. And for me, all that went through my mind is if you feel like you got screwed, you weren't giving. And I wanted to bring it back to that.
And I think you're actually right. I think there is something to it. I like the framework of looking at it as the act of giving is part of who I am at a soul level, right? And the incidents of where I may have been burned or mistreated in the industry, I have multiple individuals who hate and resent the fact that in their eyes I've been successful. Their insecurities are projected onto me. And they have built narratives that have led to a pattern of what I will call straight up harassment. Now,
really,
I don't give that much attention, but if it ever flares up into, I won't get into too much specifics, but there's an individual who has just made a whole narrative about, was harassing me and attacking me, gaslit a situation. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not even worried about it. It was like an online exchange. And I deleted their comments and blocked them because they were being a fucking asshole. And then they publicly admitted to driving other people to continue this. This individual tried to message me from another account, sent other people to message me, and I just blocked them all. Mm-hmm. And the whole narrative, because they were women, is that I silence women. Because they gaslit the situation, then turn me into the villain, which of course is total rubbish. Now, anybody who knows me from the industry knows the opportunities that I create for, and sometimes a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes, but writing connections, bringing people into the different publications that I write for or speaking or what have you. My body work is there. I'm not even worried about that sort of thing, right? But you get people who are very fixated and want to basically end you and mm-hmm. cancel you because that's their thing. And sometimes you get bullies who will grab onto ideologies that shield them from the fact that they are in fact terrible bullies. And yes, one of the risks of building media and brand is dealing with this sort of stuff. Someone gets fixated because people will get fixated on you, right? For whatever reasons, it can happen, right? Alex Hormozy at his scale is going to have people who are really fixated on him. There are people that don't like Alex that will take things from the past and continue to hold on to that grudge. There's another example. There's an individual who has a very bad reputation for just being an asshole to everybody in the industry. He was upset. I've never had any interactions with him, but I knew his reputation because me and Lane Norton were speaking at the same event. And he got in my DMs, got in commenting, and he was attacking me over something that Lane had done maybe a decade ago in Lane's personal life. And this guy has carried this, and it's been his entire fixation. I mean, he's harassed and attacked numerous people all across the industry to the point where he's driven himself into obscurity and irrelevance and ill repute, and he's destroyed himself. And guess what? I just went block, mute, done, mm-hmm. right? Move on. Don't give them the attention. Mm-hmm. So if you ever end up in a situation where, because you are doing things well, let's say on a local level, and there are other people, I deal with a few. It's like the percentage of the people who are like this are the tiniest, most minuscule thing, but we both fixate on them because we gravitate towards the negative thing, right? If you got 1,000 good Amazon reviews and one bad one, you'll fixate on the bad review. But you will deal with some crabs in the bucket mentality. These people who they crave status, they crave what they think you have, they resent you for having done it. They feel that they're entitled to somehow police or control what you say or how you do it. And they will play games, status games within a very small local pool. Whereas, I mean, I look at the stuff as how can I actually make our industry better, improve lives, health, support other great people in the industry so it actually scales out across helping more people on an international level. I'm not interested in local status games.
All right. Before you were Andrew Coates writing articles for all these major publications, taking on one-on-one clients and remote clients effectively, I won't say at will, but without needing to go and market specifically to acquire them, getting onto stages, being asked to come on big podcasts. What did you have to do to get to that point? And the reason why I asked that is I've found myself in moments of my career being angry about other people being successful when I felt like they were doing less for the marketplace than I was, and I wasn't getting my due. That is something I definitely felt at certain points in my career. And
it's human.
It is human.
It's human.
I acted on some of them, and I've apologized for the actions that I took on them because they were immature. But I imagine somebody listening to this right now is thinking, sure, Sean, you can say what you're saying. Sure, Andrew, you can say what you're saying. Andrew, you have 100,000 plus Instagram followers and you can get on any publication that you want. Sean, you built the company that has people from around the world learning how to be coaches from you and how to get out of pain without going to the doctor and missing the gym. But what about me? I live in small town wherever. I only have 2 personal training clients. I think I have smart things to say to Eb Samuel about men's health in the fitness department. He won't listen to my DM. I've asked Andrew to bring me onto his podcast. He didn't even listen to my DM. What am I supposed to do to get my stuff growing?
So there's a whole bunch of stuff to this. So you have, forgive the noise of the trucks outside if you hear it. You take those 2 clients that are in front of you and you treat them like the most important thing in the entire universe because they are. I started in a commercial gym almost 13 years ago. I was very lucky that the gym was busy and some clients were sold for me, and then some trainers left and their clients came over to me. So I got lucky. But you focus on being of service. You are always learning and gaining experience. Again, another Hormozy thing. It's like you're going to sacrifice earning potential early to learn skills. And there really are there's a lot of skills, but there's 2 main skills. There is the experience of coaching people, which is both the technical learning how to train people safely and properly, right? And then there's also the relationship side of working with that person, which is actually probably even more important when you really scale it out. And then there's the sales, right? The actual like business side of stuff. And you trade off some of your high-end earning potential to get as much experience as you can in a short window, because it's more valuable to gain that experience than it is the extra income that you might make early on doing less clients. So I got very busy early in my career, and I stayed very busy for a long time. I spent 6 years at this commercial gym, and a lot of coaches will brag to you about, hey, they're doing like 200 sessions a month, month after month after month after month. I'm one of the busiest trainers in the city's history since the day I stepped in the industry, and I'm proud of that fact. Right? It's not bragging. I'm proud of it. I've worked hard at it. I've never done 200 sessions in an individual month. I've come close. But I've done that 35 to 45 clients a week, every week for like the entire time I've been in the industry. Like we're talking like almost 13 years now. And it's a lot of it is taking care of the person in front of you, knowing how to ask for referrals, making for such a great experience relationship that those people will turn around and they will recommend other people to you. Your presence on the gym floor, if you are in person, which I think is still a valuable place for coaches to start, even if you want to go online. Right? I don't like this gatekeeping thing. Oh, you need to spend 5 years as a coach before you've earned the right to go online. That's rubbish. That's archaic, because guess what? Coaches are going to learn this stuff early hybrid, but the in-person skills are still going to make you a better online coach. Just value that. And so you put your head down, you train the clients. You don't think about status. You can document the stuff and you can work on your social media as you go. That's another set of skills that you can layer on and showcase what you're doing and the lessons from it. Great. Wise. Okay. But it's still all about the client in front of you and getting those skills early. Forget about getting on the podcasts. Forget about any of this other sort of stuff. Now, if you have skill at writing or you're interested in writing and you get involved in that early, there are people who very early on in their careers or coaching careers started writing, ended up pitching T Nation. You could learn how to do that. I literally teach that. Lee Boyce, a good friend of mine out of Toronto. Lee started writing for T Nation. I think he was in his early 20s. And there, Ben Bruno, he was at Mike Ball Strength and Conditioning, and he was writing in his spare time. He's writing articles for T Nation, right? Those guys got in early, and it's the reason why those guys have the brand. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of great coaches out there who just never valued leaning into this stuff, who are every bit as good as the legacy T Nation guys that I'll talk about. And what the difference is that these people like Lee and Ben, they just took a chance, put themselves out there, submitted, worked at it, knew what to do, and had great training ideas. Okay. So here's another thing. Here's another way to look at it. I think trainers think that, well, if I go viral, if I can get so-and-so to tweet me out or reshare me, that's going to make me. I'm going to give you a really good example of this, okay, in a second. But that stuff is going to move the needle at all, okay? You literally have to keep showing up every single day, document, create, and share for social media the wisdom, the experience, and the knowledge. And do not be afraid that someone else said it, because you want to be of service to the person who's following you, okay? You want to become top of mind for everybody who's in your immediate network and anybody who finds their way into following you. So wherever you are in life, early in your career, have Facebook and Instagram probably, and follow everybody that you know and you're acquainted with on those things. Most of them will follow you back, and then you just show what you're doing. Maybe you show some clients lifting with the client's permission. I did a lot of that early on Facebook. That got a lot of positive attention. I stayed top of mind. It was actually a major reason why I generated a lot of business over and above the word of mouth referral and the floor business. If you are professional on the floor, if your clients are getting great results and they're doing good things, you're focused on them, you're all that, then you'll get floor walk-up business in the gym you're at. That's the big one, right? I crushed at that stuff.
Well, what you're describing there for people to hear is a training session is a piece of live marketing content.
Absolutely it is. So now I'm going to give you guys an example of why, like, you think going viral is going to change your business. Okay. So I mentioned earlier my friend Adam Bornstein, and I only gotten to know him more recently. I'd met him years ago. Luca reconnected us. And Adam wanted to pull me in to help promote his book. So I leaned into that, did everything I could, created some other opportunities for him, linked him up with a lot of great people who could promote it. And so Adam, knowing me and Luca, turned around and asked, and because Adam edits Arnold Schwarzenegger's email newsletter, Pump Club. It's great. It's actually an excellent thing. Everybody should get on it. And Adam said, let's get you guys on there. Will you each write up a workout? Blah, blah, blah. Here's the parameters, and we'll share it up in this thing. So a couple of weeks ago, my workout, and tagged with my name and my Instagram, was shared through Arnold Schwarzenegger's email newsletter, which I got to send home to my dad, who was pretty excited, being the movie buff he is. Right. He thought that was cool. And so then Jonathan Goodman texted me that morning asking, hey, what do you think this will do for your following, right? And I actually tagged it up in my Instagram story and tagged Arnold. And Arnold, or whoever runs his account, reshared it through his story. Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? Millions of followers. I got a screenshot of that one, okay? That's cool. Like, personal little feather in the cap. And people are going to listen and think I'm bragging about this shit. I hope you get that I'm really illustrating these points. So Jonathan Goodman asked me, what do you think it's going to do? And I said, nothing. It's going to do nothing for my following. I said, because the people reading that newsletter, they are there for Arnold, his celebrity, who he is, his legacy. They're not there for me, okay? And they'll probably do the workout, but that's not going to turn into thousands of followers. And the funny thing was, it was the lowest follower growth day that I had in a month on Instagram.
Really?
Yes. So it didn't move the needle. Now, I just want people to understand that if I can get a workout shared and my name and my Instagram shared into a newsletter, that's probably the biggest fitness newsletter in the industry at this point, or at least damn near close, right? And shout it out like that, and it didn't turn into anything. A lot of coaches would think, oh, I'd probably get like 20 clients from that alone. No, you won't. So that cannot be the goal. Going viral is one of the worst strategies you could ever try. with your media. It has to be about serving the person in front of you tirelessly every single time.
I can corroborate that experience, not in scale, but recently I had I was privileged to be on the Powercast with Mark Bell and Nsima, and everyone on our team was like, "Oh, we'll brace for the inflow." I'm like, "All right, well, we'll see." I guess some people probably followed us that day, but it wasn't as if people were flowing in saying, "Hey, I found you on." And I don't think it's because I did a poor job on the show. I think it's just because that's how it works. You know, like I've been on some shows, like are you friendly with Gabrielle Lyon at all?
She texted me yesterday. She's one of my speakers in my event in October.
She's a stud.
And I met her at Kenny. So another guy that everybody should know. I feel like I'm dropping so many names, but like these are just great people. So my pal Kenny Santucci, he does Strong New York. He owns a strength club there, and he does this massive expo. We had such a good time. It's where I got reconnected with Jace Phillips. Lucas spoke. Just did a cool job with it. And Gabrielle Lyon and Dawn Saladino, they did a presentation together. So I met Gabrielle, and she's just a really sweet person. Like we're talking there for a couple of minutes, and she's like, grabs my phone, here, take my number, right? Like she's a really cool human. And so when it came time for my event, Dawn's like, hey, why don't we get Gabrielle? I'm like, okay. He's like, hang on, let me text her, right? Anyway, so he's like, yeah, I got Gabrielle for you. That's the kind of guy Dawn is. Dawn is just like a pit bull. If he likes you, he will say, hey, listen, we're going to do this, right? I'm going to go get this person, right? He was fighting with me. Goes back to what we were saying earlier about, asking for stuff. Like, I don't like asking for stuff either. My policy is I don't ask. I've never asked to come on a podcast. And if I'm going to try to get in with a publication, I'm going to make sure I've earned it so much that it's so valuable. They're like, listen, we can't say no, but usually I'm asked. So he's like fighting with me, like, man, how can I help you? How can I help you? I'm like, man, Don is good. I just like helping people. He said, oh, man. I was like, well, and this is what I said. One of my goals one day is to write for Men's Health. He's like, done, boom. He's like, here, I'm going to email Eb and Brett and blah, 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 and boom, and done. And then within like, a day, there was a connection, and then, a bit of back and forth over a few weeks, and I gave them a piece and I got published. And, that was like another one of those like awesome things. And again, that's just the power. Like if you show up and help and support other people, people will just fight with you to do good shit for you. Like, and that's the way Dawn is. Anyway, so sorry, you were saying about Gabrielle, but
no, I was just saying we got to pop after her podcast, but there's no rhyme or reason to why her podcast would pop, but the Ready State and Mark Bell would not. And the other side of all of that is Gabrielle introduced me to Don. Don, while I was at his house, reached out, like grabbed his phone and was like, I'm introducing you to this person right now. And so you're right. Exactly right. It's all about providing the value that compels somebody else to do the thing. I think that the frustrating thing for someone who's trying to do this, and I'll share myself as an example. It's hard to see it while it's happening, because as you're climbing a social ladder, well, let's just call it what it is. As you're climbing a social ladder, you can take for granted the introductions that are being made by the people who you've established relationships with, because they're no longer the person who you're like revering in, on social media world. So it becomes this like, you've probably been introduced to 10 people in the last 3 months who could change your life if you went and provided value to those relationships, but you may have taken those relationships for granted because the person who made the intro is someone you've known for a long time. And the person they introduced you to doesn't have an obviously large following that you're like, oh, I'm going to leverage their following. So you didn't do the thing for the next person. I get it. I do. Like I'm the guy who's like, I will sit up at night and think, what do I have to say that Joe Rogan wants to talk about? 100%. Let's not mince words, right? I've listened to him on podcasts. I've listened to other people who are big names on podcasts. I listened to a podcast last week with Timothy Ferriss and Eric Cressy, where Timothy Ferriss and Eric Cressy were talking about what do you do for people who've been dealing with pain for a long time. And what effectively came from it was Cressy said there isn't somebody out there serving that audience. And I was like, what about me? What about me? How do I talk to you guys? And so I get it, but it's having patience.
Well, I mean, in that specific example, I've got a friend close to this, so I'll see if I can do an introduction after the fact. I won't drop the name, but a good friend of mine is very close with Eric, even though I don't have any relationship with Eric whatsoever. But I mean, I hear nothing but the best stuff. So we'll come back to that one.
Okay.
I think a couple thoughts here. I want to make sure I circle back to them. I think it's very easy to get focused on wanting, craving, desiring to be in the room with people that we see as our heroes or who are high status in the industry. And yes, that's an honest thing, but I also really just didn't think about it that way. Sometimes I look around, I'm like, how the fuck did I get here? I would attend conferences because I enjoyed attending conferences. Okay? Here's a little something for you guys. The first conference I ever traveled to was the Fitness Summit in Kansas City in 2017. This is a really it's a small, medium. I think there was 175 people there.
People should know before they go any further. That was not a quick hop and a skip of a drive for you from the next town over.
No, I'm flying in from the largest, the northerly most large city in the Western Hemisphere, Edmonton, Alberta. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yes, Anchorage, what have you, is farther. It's not as big as Edmonton. Edmonton's a million people city. But yeah, I have a little bit of travel, right? Okay, but it's still worth it.
I'm just describing that you didn't wait for them to come to your town. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly, right? Well, now I'm the one who brings that stuff here because I've gotten so much out of these things that I'm like, hell, I'm going to bring an event to my doorstep. We did one in 2019. We're doing it again. But went to this event in 2017, and because my now friends Pete Dupuis and Dr. Spencer Nadolski, and the lineup was full of people like Alan Aragon was one of the speakers, and Brett Contreras was one of the speakers, and Mark Fisher Fitness, who's a really amazing human being, and a bunch of other great people. And you just go there and hang out in the audience, and Greg Nuckols of Stronger by Science is just there, and I'm like, oh shit, you're Greg Nuckols, wow. And Andy Morgan, Rip Body, who's over in Japan, is a really great guy, great nutrition guy, great business mentor. Sohee Lee happened to be hanging out there. Lou Schuler, he's a well-known writer, editor in the fitness space. He's the MC. Got to meet a lot of really great people. And it was cool to get to know them. And many of those people are still to this day friends of mine. But I also met a lot of coaches who were just like me in the audience. And that's where I needed to be. I didn't look at the stage and go, oh, I want to be up there. That was foreign to me. I didn't even imagine that. But I met two friends there out of many. I probably came away with 100 new Facebook friends that weekend. Mm-hmm. And I met my friend Tim Arndt and my friend Jeff Aker. Now, Tim is a gym manager in Spokane, Washington. And then, of course, I discovered pretty quickly he does his own small regional event in Spokane. So I attend the next year. And Nick Tuminello is a speaker. And my now friend Brad Dieter, who's one of the owners of Macros Inc., which is a really good nutrition company, and James Krieger, who's a pretty legendary guy in the research and fitness space, and Chad Landers, who is over in LA, and he trains some celebrities over there. A lot of great people. They're speakers. So, and I have such a great time. I returned in 2019. And so 2020, we're not going to talk about that. That got wiped out. But 2021, Tim says, hey, I'm going to do this event despite the fact that the travel stuff's a bit dodgy. So he has a speaker drop out, Greg Nuckols. I owe Greg my speaking career. And Tim reaches out to me because now my Instagram and I've been writing for a lot of stuff, but Instagram had grown a lot. And he's like, man, listen, I want you to come and speak. And I was like, well, why don't you ask Lee Boyce again? He's like, no, I want you to. Okay, so I committed to it, figured out how to work, put together slides, presentation, worked out really hard, went well. And then from that, I met one of the other speakers who hosted his own event, and he invited me to speak at his event next year. My buddy, Luke Carlson, and he is the owner of, I'm trying to remember the company's name. He's based out of Minneapolis. Anyway, I apologize. It's slipping my mind, but Luke is an incredible human, great public speaker. So led to more opportunities. Now, go back to the first event in 2017. I met my friend Jeff Aker. Turns out Jeff is actually from Calgary, right, just near Edmonton. And he's the Alberta Provincial Director of the NSCA. So I go to his NSCA Provincial Clinic in 2018, meet a lot of great people. Go in 2019, meet a lot of great people. Come 2022, when he's back in person again, we talk about it, and he has me speak and present at the NSCA Provincial Clinic. Somebody who's been following me is part of the Rocky Mountain Regional Board, my friend Joe Sudamak. And so he reaches out to Jeff, trying to get a hold of me and wants me to come down. And so they have me fly down and give a talk at an NSCA regional as a result of this. Just because I immersed myself in this environment, had beers with these people and made friends. But it wasn't because I'm like, hey, I want to speak at these events. It's like, these are my friends. And I showed up to support and go to their events. And then as things started breaking for me, they turn around like, hey, listen, we want you to come speak. And then that turns into, my friends Jordan Duggar and Aaron Diamond reaching out and saying, hey, we want you to come. We had a speaker drop out of the FitBiz Mastermind. And so they bring me down to speak at that. And more and more, like I hosted an event in 2019 with a team. Up to this point, I did not ever have a public speaking thing. I didn't speak at my own event. I emceed it, but I didn't speak because I didn't, in my mind, I always said it. I had to be invited to speak at something else before I'd speak at my own event. That's been my mindset the whole time. So it's not like I've been hungry and seeking this stuff out. It's just I kept showing up, giving, writing, creating media, free media, doing the podcast, building a relationship, showing up to support other people. And over time, it just turned into this snowball of stuff that I could never have imagined. So for the coach listening to this, and if you think, wow, that stuff's all really cool, you don't even need this stuff for a successful fitness career. Let's set that aside. You don't need this stuff, okay? But if it's personally fulfilling to you, it's really okay to build a social media audience. It's good to do this other stuff, but go and learn the skills, build long form media, whether it's writing, video, audio, do that stuff, okay? Learn that skill, be patient with it, do it for years if you have to, okay? And always keep fixated on the person in front of you, serve that client. Don't be in a rush to get off the gym floor. If you want to build online, but be of service to those people. Okay, voice, video masters, whatever you got to do to make those people feel important so that way they're successful. And you do that for long enough. And what I will say this is every person we've talked about on this podcast, everybody who's been successful in this space has done really, really well with all of these things for a very long time. And there are a handful of people who are making a show, who are grifting on business coaching, we'll say, because it's a little bit more common in that space. There's a lot of brilliant business coaches, but there's a lot of grifters. And they have sparse experience coaching anybody else. They talk big, loud game. And sometimes they end up at tables, big tables in the industry. They will sometimes. But they don't have the backing of the body of work. And most people can see through them. Or their loudness can fool some people for a certain amount of time. But inevitably, those people, they fall by the wayside because they get found out and discovered. And the grift is over.
I was on a show called the One Shot Podcast, and we were talking about the concept of how do people find, quote, success without doing the work necessary to have the success. And the idea was like, if you're out there giving, it's reasonable that you would be upset that somebody else is successful. They have what you want and they haven't done the things that you believe are necessary for them to deserve it. And my response to them about that was, some people just have a God-given ability to be the kind of person you don't want to be. And so to try to build your business around their success would be to try to become someone that you don't value being. And I appreciate you echoing that in your own terms.
I mean, it's obvious to me right away that you and I see the world very, very similarly. We travel in similar circles with the same type of people, have the same values, and there may be certain things that are slightly tweaked in one direction more than the other for some of these things. But I'm not surprised that people that kind of gravitate to the same space that we're in. And I actually understand why coaches might desire to be in the space. I think you can get there. I mean, that's the other thing too, is I remember early in my career, I didn't understand how someone like me coaching on the gym floor could ever do the things that, a lot of the T Nation writers that I had been reading and been doing, or your Mike Isertels or your Jonathan Goodmans. And now I look around and yeah, cool. I get to actually sit down and have dinner at the table with those guys whenever, or women. So there's a lot of successful women in the industry too, I'm friends with. And that's cool. But I didn't set out with that goal in mind. I set out to be of service to the person in front of me. Listen, I also had a livelihood to earn, right? Like I needed to make sure that I was paying my bills early on in my career. I didn't start my career in the same position that I am currently in. And also, I've said this numerous times. Sometimes it feels odd, but I am the six-figure professional, oftentimes sitting at seven-figure tables or even greater, right? I'll be doing a Q&A for free for coaches pretty much in about a little over an hour. And I'm bringing a very good friend of mine on to answer questions. It's Mike Dola. So Mike, he had an 8-figure exit from selling Stronger You, which is a very successful nutrition coaching company that he built himself, and then started hiring in coaches and just was of service. And Mike's a really down-to-earth guy. But at the same time, some of the people who've been really successful are really down to earth. So you don't have to get starstruck or feel weird around them. Because if you're a normal person, you treat them like a normal person. And if you find ways to actually like serve them and help them, man, you can develop friends that way. I do think it's a mistake to try to court the attention of the people that you perceive as your role models and who are successful. I would first and foremost take care of the client in front of you. I've said that a lot. But then you look at the coach who's on the same journey as you. That's the person to spend your time supporting, interacting with. Get them on your podcast. Don't ask Eric Cressy. Eric's busy with the Yankees and CSP and his Twins. Okay? Don't worry about Eric. Like, take that coach who's doing good things. You like their integrity. Bring them on your podcast. Talk to them. Interview them. Build a relationship with them. And it's not like is it Barney Stinson on an episode of How I Met Your Mother where they go to the gym and Barney's like, if anybody knows a Barney character, right? He's like being nice to all these girls that are in there. And he basically is making investments in a lot of these women. I mean, it sounds super scuzzy, but I mean, it's a sitcom where he's investing in all these women who are going to the gym with the premise that they're going to get hotter and he can hook up with them later. Right? Like, don't approach the world that way. And then one girl, I guess, has a breakdown, runs past crying. She's eating ice cream. And Barney is literally like, oh, she just hit junk bond status. Like, don't think like that. Mm. But if you invest in and support other people along the road, first of all, it feels great. You will learn a lot. There are going to be people who are just like you, but they're doing different things. They're doing things better than you. They figured some stuff out. Their systems are great. Their service is great. Their media is great. They have skills you need. You will be inspired and able to learn from those people. And they probably have more bandwidth to spend the time interacting with you to help you with that than Eric Cressy will. I like Eric as a metaphor for this. And then over time, you'll grow together. Or sometimes what will end up happening is all the people at that 2017 event and the other events I've attended, I've become good friends with. I've been able to turn around and leverage my media to help and support them, teach them skills as my stuff has grown and open doors for them too, which is a good feeling.
I would say that's a good spot to end, but I want to give you an opportunity to add anything we didn't talk about.
I don't know. I mean, like, this stuff's fun. Like, this wasn't necessarily about the nuts and bolts of nutrition or training.
No,
I think that most people in our space, the coaches who are listening, are probably pretty good at that stuff. They know how to go. They'll go and do pre-script, Jordan Shallow stuff for biomechanics. By the way, stop listening to TikTok influencers on biomechanics who are branding around this crap. No, that stuff's rubbish, literally rubbish. People are making shit up. Sometimes they get it right, but usually that's rubbish. Go and get into what Mike Israel is saying. Go get into what Muscle Doc Jordan Shallow is saying, right? If you don't know Shallow is also a good friend of Dylan's. Shallow is great stuff. Okay. He's one of my speakers in my event too. He's Canadian. Hold on. Let me bring my train of thought back. If you're going to learn nutrition, go do PN stuff. Go do RP's nutrition certification, right? I'm literally going through that right now. It's fantastic. Go do Martin McDonald's MNU. Okay, great stuff.
Hold on,
learn the nuts and bolts.
I want to go back a second. What made you decide you wanted to go through the nutrition certification right now?
RP?
Yeah.
Because they had me beta test it.
Okay.
I had to sign an NDA. I wasn't allowed to talk about it while I was beta testing it, but I've known Mike and Nick for a long time, right? They're friends. So they had me and a bunch of other coaches beta test it. I liked it. And I'm actually thinking about, I mean, I don't know if I'll do this or not, given the bandwidth, but I've been thinking about like having a very limited, high quality nutrition coaching option to build onto what I'm doing. Because if you listen to Jason Phillips, I had him on the podcast recently, and Jason and a lot of people are very much in the mindset of like specializing either in nutrition or training, whereas like John Berardi for a long time was really selling the idea as PN was growing, and I think it had merit, of being that concierge with the trainer who can do everything or know where to get everything. But I think the industry's kind of going back the other way now, where I think people are getting back into a little bit more specialization. And like, I know my nutrition, I will talk nutrition and solve problems for clients all the time. But in terms of like very formal nutrition coaching, I've got a lot of people who I think are great at it. And I'll actually refer specific people who are looking for that service out. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I would like to have the option to build that out because it has scalable potential. It's something I picked up from my friend Mike Dola, for example, like the lessons I'm learning from the people I'm spending time with. Mm-hmm. So there are great resources out there to go and find these things. And I probably can't do them quite as well as the best of the best in the industry, right? So, but the thing that I really enjoy is breaking down the media side of stuff, the brand side of stuff, the relationship side of stuff in the industry. And I really hope there's a lot of valuable lessons here. And I think patience is essential. You get tired of hearing it all the time. I look at where I am now and like, I wouldn't want to get teleported back 10 years because they're like, oh God, like that's a long journey, but very grateful for the opportunities that I have. I'm grateful for the people who've supported me. I thrive upon doing good things for other people if I can. And I appreciate you having me on, Sean. This is wonderful. It's great to get the time.
It's been my pleasure. I feel like I could have started the podcast and said, all right, what do you want to tell people? And then just kept my mouth shut and you would have done a great job. Where can people find you who want to do more after this podcast?
If you are interested in anything I talked about, I will absolutely answer questions if you message me on Instagram. That is the easiest thing, at Andrew Coates Fitness. Yes, I'm also on Threads now. I'm having fun. I was sort of like early in on that. And I find it actually has sort of a different feel, the way you can engage coaches. If you have the bandwidth, try it. I actually think it's great. But everything I do, I'll share it on my Instagram. Obviously, my website's linked through there. My podcast, the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast, which we have to talk off air and figure out how to get you scheduled for it because I need to have you on and we'll continue more of this conversation. And again, my events in October 13th and 14th, the Evolve Strength. That's the gym that I contract out of my friend's gym. It's called the Evolve Strength Business and Coaching Conference. And I have a great lineup that includes, but is not limited to, also Dr. Jordan Shallow, Don Saladino, Dr. Sam Spinelli, Luca Hocevar, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Krista Scott Dixon of PN fame, Brian Cron, Lee Boyce, and a whole bunch more. I'll be in there too. So apologize if I missed a few names, but I can give you guys Dean Somerset and Logan Dubé as well. I got some really great people.
Decent lineup.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. So worked hard to make it work, and I can't wait.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
This is wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Turn pro. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Active Life podcast. Please remember, give us a hand, rate it, review it wherever you listen to shows. We are on a mission to humanize the healthcare industry by professionalizing the fitness industry to empower the individual to live a life unlimited by the way that their body looks, feels, or performs. If you are inspired by that mission and want to jump on the wagon, find us anywhere. Active Life Professional on Instagram, Active Life RX on Instagram. Come to me personally at Dr. Sean Pastuch. We want to welcome you onto the train. We want you to be a part of the mission. We want to offer you the opportunity to pursue this right alongside us. We're inspired by your effort, and we hope to help you in your journey. Turn pro.